That's the Opportunivore stage of Bannerlord, or in this case, Tales of the Age of Men. You're not strong enough to face big armies, but you're too big to chase down bandits, and so you're searching. Well, not for huge armies like that, but you're searching for armies of 100, 125, especially that are being attacked. And this guy's going to siege right in front of us. I don't know if we'll do defense this early on, but let's start an episode right here. Welcome back again, friends, to another episode of Tactical Enlightenment. Our YouTube channel is dedicated to all things Bannerlord related. You're watching Tales of the Age of Men, another episode of our It's Good to Be Bad series as we play our Gundabad Orc here, Thorgrash. He's got an incredible looking set of gear. He's got a great looking car, has fur seats. We've got a mostly orc army. We do have some Dunlin troops slipping into the ranks, right? That's just because they're there and we need reinforcements. It's a strong army too. It's probably 60% tier 3, tier 4 and above. And war hasn't quite expanded yet, right? Dol Guldur is not at war with all the forces yet, right? All the forces from the north are not at war yet with all the forces from the south. And so you have sort of this strange amalgamation of different things happening. And to this stage, good is doing pretty well, right? The forces of good here, they have Helm's Deep and Orthanc, and I say they, the Rohirrim here, and they're trying to siege down one of our last two locations here. So we could potentially defend that, but I continue just to look for targets of opportunity. We're fast, and there's one right there. You just bob and weave, and he's a dead man, right? And battles like this are key in the Mercenary stage because we want to inflict a bunch of damage without suffering damage. It's a very, very simple concept, but just like making sure you have enough money when you get to your retirement age, very simple concept. It's a lot harder to find a roadmap to it. I actually functioned as a bit of a financial advisor at work in my 30-year career in the fire service. And so hopefully on some level here we can function as a battlefield advisor for you guys. Take a look at our Porsche here, right? Look at that thing. That thing looks amazing. It snarls, it growls, it goes fast. They're very quick to accelerate, but their top speed seems to be less than the best Rohirrim horses, which I think is a great compromise, right? Without making them overpowered. The fact that they can attack horses, you know, while they're running around, that already makes them very powerful. Now, we need more archers. Even though we have 55, maybe 60% archers, I think we want 70%, 80%. Because the reality is early on in a Bannerlord campaign, when you're a mercenary, since it is all about making money and doing as much damage as possible, in this case we have defensive enemies, we're going to have to get our troops sort of sped up here. You know, you want to inflict damage at range, that way you minimize casualties. That minimizing casualties saves you money, and critically, it allows you to upgrade your troops, right, as you continue to get stronger, especially since in the Tales of Age of Men, they have like tier 7, maybe even tier 8 archers out there. If you're going to get those units upgraded, right, this is the stage where you're picking on weaker forces and shooting little disheveled Rohirrim forces off their horses. Now, I've got to find a new longer axe. This guy, you know, size sometimes does matter, especially when you're a horseman or a warg rider. I can't seem to hit anybody with this stubby little thing. It's definitely designed to be a foot axe, and we've been making it work. You know, we can occasionally get a good stroke in, but I also feel pretty inept on my warg. I literally feel like I can't hit people right in front of me. So maybe we'll do spear here for a little bit. But I would like to stay two-handed weapons, so maybe we've got a longer sword as well. I mean, even right over units here, I feel inept. And of course, I don't feel well. You guys know this. Well, hopefully the gameplay doesn't suffer too much. I'm still sick with H3N2, which is the strange scientific term for seasonal flu, basically. And this year's one, I guess, is pretty bad. It's wreaking havoc across the U.S. It's going to kill thousands of people. I read it's 6 times more transmissible than COVID and 10 times more dangerous, right? And people still ask me, well, do you have COVID? And I was like, I wish I had COVID. As we behead the last little recruit here who tries to flee, our troops roar with excitement as he got beheaded, and 0 casualties, right? That's what I'm talking about. Now, we only got 20 kills there, but that's obviously, that's a good start to today's episode. Yeah, so COVID has been basically relegated to, at least at this stage, to the dustbins of history, right? It's obviously, it was in its early stages, especially it sounds like the strains that were going through Italy, wiping out the older generation there at the outset of the pandemic. It's now been reduced to a highly transmissible head cold that, don't get me wrong, it still kills people, and apologies if anybody knows somebody who lost somebody to COVID, but the pandemonium... the pandemic is over, but the pandemonium continues. I still see people, and I still hear people, oh my God, did you get COVID? No, dude, relax. I've got something much worse. It's H3N2. It's working on its way to bronchitis here, which is worse. But thank you, I didn't get COVID. We are good. And that's the nature of disease, generally speaking, is over the course of time, diseases tend to weaken. In other words, the weaken their effect on how much damage they do to us, and they tend to spread easier, right? And those two things run hand in hand. If you kill the host, you don't spread very readily. People are chewing on the dead bodies over in the gutter. All right, well, we're off to a morbid start here, and we've got this Isengard force, right? We could do a little defense. We're going to continue to dump prisoners into the dungeon here. We only have a couple places to do this at, and as you can see, they're piled up here. We've got, you know, the Rohirrim leadership is here. And that's an interesting part about this mod. I've rambled on it a little bit in the past, but the fact that we have, there's no peace, right? In a normal Bannerlord campaign, you get peace, and if you look down in the lower left, just like that, it'll say, you know, such and such is free, is free, is free. All these people are released. They're released because you have peace. Well, if you don't have peace, I am curious how that's going to affect the game mechanics. It is possible that they're going to have to come up with some alternatives to that, because Bannerlord is designed to have periodic peace. Otherwise, you have just everybody's in a dungeon and there's no action whatsoever. So alternative things they could do, they could obviously encourage the AI to siege where there's a lot of prisoners. I think that's probably hard to code. And we're just going to wait here, at least for a second or two. Almost certainly we'll get enough forces here and there. They will wear down until the point where we can attack them. Although look at these forces just kind of running everywhere. Not a lot of participation by our allies here. They're acting like orcs. And we've got ourselves a brawl here. We've had a number of these sort of, I guess you'd call them mid-sized fights that are, you know, they're 500 versus 600, and the power bar is basically split right down the center. These are the best for you tacticians out there to hone your craft, because you should be able to make a good impact, and you should be able to navigate these. The more you do, the more of these you enter, the more you learn from your mistakes. These are great battlegrounds to improve your skill set. Now, the most important thing, of course, is watching what your enemy's doing and then trying to supplement them. The most important thing really is the random RNG element of it. Here, it looks like we're being defensive, although now half the forces just started pouring downhill. All right, so quickly, we adjust here, right? We want to be on this slope with our archers. If they're going to charge downhill, or maybe they're going to set up on these hills, we want to have our archers raining in damage to the enemy as they approach. I'd like to get a flank, but our troops are running straight sideways here, so what do, right? You adjust, you adapt. And there's no morals, no ethics here whatsoever, right? You don't actually care if the ally force gets butchered as long as you don't get captured. That's some true mercenary style, right? We're only here for the money. So our forces, our primary job is, of course, to survive and try to make an impact in a manner so that we win, but we don't get huge damages to our forces. Get our forces set up here behind. They've got a bunch of cavalry over there. That's disconcerting. The Rohirrim cavalry is good, you know, as far as cavalry go. Cavalry and Bannerlord is still not good, and infantry is kind of right in the middle. They're solid. The infantry kill you when they're masked in Bannerlord. If there's like 6 guys here and 9 guys there, they're fodder. But when you have a big wedge like this, and they arrive at stuff, they kill everything because they just make an incredibly dense wedge. So your forces, of course, you want to avoid that, or if you have to, if you absolutely must, you want to square. Right here, we're just going to kite. I got some skirmishers in there, so they're chucking javelins down into these packed ranks. And the cavalry's coming in on us here. Came in a lot faster, honestly, than I expected. And that's one of the dangers and one of the hard parts about being a vassal, right? Especially against a cavalry-heavy army like this. The enemy's going to attack you from the flanks, right? So you want to set up on a flank to have your archers work, when in reality what's going to happen is you're going to end up dealing with a lot of the enemy cavalry. So do a little bit of work here, and we'll take a look at our troops. It's a scrum, though. Cavalry make Bannerlord a lot less tactically interesting. And what I mean by that is that you as a commander don't have that much control when there are just cavalry running everywhere. And the way that Bannerlord cavalry work, it literally is a free-for-all. Every guy runs to the edge of the map and then charges. They don't wait for no help at all. They don't charge in unison. They charge in a giant collective scrum that resembles something out of a online event where there's no coordination. Right? Everybody's just trying to kill something. And the tactical effect of that is chaos, right? There's literally fighting everywhere, and there's not a lot of sense to it. Right? None of these guys, it's just a giant scrum. Now, this happened, of course, historically, but there were also plenty of organized charges. Most of the time, of course, whether you're talking medieval history or more late modern period, they didn't just, charge in and fight to the death. Cavalry charges were for morale. Cavalry charges were to make an enemy flee. Cavalry charges were to run down forces that were trying to scatter somewhere. Look at this guy, got decked off his horse and then cut apart. We're getting comfortable with this long axe fast. Right now the enemy's in real trouble here because we got a long fast axe. Our warg eats people. He's up there trying to bite and shit. And this character, I can already tell, is going to be a lot of fun. It's probably going to be a lot of fun to watch too, because I've got a lot of experience on a horse as an axeman, and we're going to get pretty damn savage with this character over the course of 10-15 episodes. I don't think this mod is meant to be played to completion, right? The guys who are like, are you going to play 50 episodes? I don't think it's finished to that stage. And what I mean by that is, like, I don't first I find, especially the grind where you're just sieging castle after castle with a force of 1,500, I find that pretty tedious, pretty boring. Most people do. But also I think because of the diplomacy within the game, there isn't much, right? I could make my own kingdom. That is one question I do have. I guess that could be a goal for this campaign, is at one point or another, if we're really ripping it apart, we can become our own kingdom. And see how that affects the game. Right? Does everybody declare war? Are you neutral, right? Are you your own kingdom within the War of the Rings, or does it, it obviously it wouldn't fit very well. The only kingdom that was realistically going to become their own kingdom during the War of the Rings was Saruman. Right? He was trying to become sort of an upstart rival to the Dark Lord. And he would have had everybody declare war on him, right? If Saruman came and watched our guides here on the channel, he would understand. He needs at least 2 million gold. He probably didn't have near as many orcs. He didn't have a good garrison. The ants just ripped him apart. Right? I think realistically, just like what happened to Saruman, everybody would consider you an enemy if all of a sudden you just became independent, right? And the Dark Lord had not attacked Saruman. In the movie, you don't really see this at all. There's no real indication that the Dark Lord... But the Dark Lord was, Sauron was furious. Or at least it's perceived infuriation with Saruman for not kind of letting him in on what he was doing, right? He's the guy... The Sauron, that guy, he's like sending Nazguls to the tower in a hurry saying, what the fuck are you doing? Right? How come you haven't captured my hobbits? Because if you don't understand, Saruman is basically a pawn initially. The Dark Lord gets a hold of Saruman through the Orthanc stone, right? Through the Palantir, and starts to control the guy. And then, in the book at least, it appears that he's like, fuck that. If I get the ring, I'm on my own, right? I'm gonna break off from this guy and do whatever I want.
Thanks for your help, stranger.
And how nice is this? We get a bunch of troops to replace the dead, a bunch of upgrades, 178k. We're starting to rip now in this campaign. We're starting to get all kinds of good equipment. Now, those boots are worse than stuff we already got. In like our third battle, we got legendary, Theoden's legendary boots, right? These things right here. This is ridiculous. 57 armor for boots. That's not a thing. So we want them to hit our feet. It'd be nice if they attacked our feet more often. We're getting a bunch of good gear, but a lot of this gear is not gear I want to use because of the aforementioned, you know, desire to look like an orc army. Ironically, we have almost all humans in our party, right? All our companions are humans, but we're going to put them in an orc army anyway. And we got, I guess we could donate a few of these scrubby troops. These prisoners, I think you just donate all of them. Yeah, handpick some of the very best troops here. We'll hit clan tier 3 soon, and then we'll have, what, 120, right, in our army, give or take. So, this army's about to take off, and we're severely encumbered. We're just, you know, we're winning these battles, and we're inflicting huge casualties, so we're getting the lion's share of all this goods. And I would love to have a city to sell it in, but what do we have? We don't have any cities. You can't sell your goods at a castle, right? So we're sort of limited in our ability here to sell all our war booty. Losing Orthanc, and we lost Orthanc like before we even knew it happened. I didn't even see it really fall. It was astonishing how fast Orthanc fell. I never had anything to do with it. And the next thing you know, Theoden was setting up his seat atop the spires. And we're just, I'm so encumbered here. I'm like at risk, right? We could get captured something fierce moving this slow. I don't know. I guess you just dump a bunch of shit on the highway here. Speed is so critical in the mercenary stage, right? You get captured, you get run down, you're just toast.
I don't.
We will do our best we can to soldier on here, but at some point or other, I just can't do it. You know, just like when old players can no longer play sports. I'm going on about 2 weeks now. Oh shit!
So
I just
tell me who I fight.
accidentally ran into a fight here. Hopefully we can prevail. But you guys can tell I'm still sick. I'm still occasionally muting just to cough and stuff like that. Nothing you can do about it, right? Viruses are basically undefeated. The more humans try to flu vaccine this and chicken soup that, the more they just mutate and find their way into us. It's our own damn fault. There's too many of us, right? There's too many people. You never hear of like the Shaolin monks getting sick because they're living with like 50 other people up in the mountains. So we got overpopulation issues. Nothing you can do about it. Right? You can't tell people stop fucking. In fact, quite the opposite. Capitalism, especially most capitalistic systems that are set up today, you must have more people. It's basically, you can see it's a doomed system because for the financial elements to work, you must have more people 20 years from now than you do today. Otherwise, the financial system collapses. Tell me that's not a Ponzi system. It's basically like a Ponzi system on the resources of the planet. Eventually, whether it's 80 billion or 300 billion, the planet can no longer sustain increased life forms, increased numbers of people, and we're fucked. I mean, I guess it's sort of a version of Malthus, you know, his iron laws of economics, but the bottom line is that most capitalistic systems are not designed to function. In fact, they collapse pretty readily as soon as you start to have negative population, as soon as you start to have people spending a lot less money. The whole system is very, very much autocatalytic. And what that means essentially is if some parts of it work really well, it makes other parts work really well, right? Capitalism is an amazingly momentum-based system. If it's going well, then people get jobs, and those people get jobs and they go buy shit, and the people they buy shit from, they hire more people, and then those people get jobs, and then they buy shit, and then, you know, et cetera, et cetera. It's autocatalytic. In other words, the better it gets, right? It's sort of just continual, and that's part of the reason for the rise of the British Empire, part of the reason for the rise of the U.S. Empire, but they're highly dependent on long-term continuous consumption. And some of these resources are not renewable. What do you think? End game, right? Probably not in our lifetimes. Probably not in your grandchild's lifetimes. But at some point or other, if we don't nuke ourselves or get, you know, some COVID superbug that wipes out civilization, we're going to have to figure out an alternative. And the hardest part of that, of course, is that the iron grip of the people who are in charge are not about to embrace some new system that decreases profit. That is the savage reality of things. Trying not to depress you guys too much, right? Again, we're talking a long time. Enjoy that walk today in the sun. I didn't mean to depress you, but the reality is that the system we're in, that we're participating in, is not sustainable, is guaranteed to fail eventually. It'll probably adapt, right? We'll probably figure out some way for it to adapt and adjust. But in its current form, it's absolutely not sustainable. Just buying shit from Amazon, you know, that you don't need, and accumulating huge piles of fucking refuse everywhere. It's not going to work well. All right, perfect. We've got the enemy force to swarm the center core of allies here, and that's going to allow us to flank. We do have archers in a poor position here. This ruffled landscape just did not really, you know, encourage me good positioning of our archers. Sometimes your ally will position in a way where there's no good position for you, right? You got to choose the least worst position. And that's what I'm trying to do here. Just trying to keep our archers and skirmishers 30 to 40 meters from the enemy force. They're starting to wilt. They charge these tough Orcs. And just like we discovered in our Rohirrim campaign, boy, the fucking Uruks are tough. They are iron fucking tough units to charge. And the Rohirrim infantry is pretty fucking bad. Or at least mediocre, is probably a better word. They have no archers too, or virtually no archers. So the Rohirrim live and die with their cavalry, which I'm sure is exactly what the developers, the modders, planned. That's historically accurate, right? You don't hear of huge infantry charges by the Rohirrim. They're a cavalry kingdom, and maybe they'll do a lot better in 1.3, right? Because cavalry gets such a big boost. As some of you have mentioned, there is ways to increase cavalry damage in this mod. I'm loath to change the settings significantly because I don't want you guys to get a dramatically different version of what you will get if you play this game. Right? I'm always hesitant. Guys are like, there's this mod, and there's this mod, and there's this mod, and there's this mod. Well, you introduce 30 mods, right, to your campaign, and then picture the guy who just joins our YouTube channel, right? He got on console last month, and he found Bannerlord or whatever, and he wants to enjoy it. And he's watching these, and he's like, all right, I'm learning. And how did you get that screen? How did you... I don't understand how you commanded your armies like that. How did you do this? What was that? And you're like, oh, those are mods. Yeah, you can't get them. Right? Like, that's a highly distressing situation for those lads. So, it's not that we're going to stay vanilla. We have mods. We're going to use things for sure, like the RTS mod. Things that make it easier for me as a content maker, to keep you guys from going insane with boredom. But we're also not going to heavily mod these campaigns to the point where they're unrecognizable, right? I'm very, very, very hesitant to introduce significantly altering mods. Guys are like, use the diplomacy system. That completely alienates every single person who cannot use it because it's so dramatically different. I've used it. It's good. It's a good system. Although to me it seemed too easy still. But yeah, there are lots of mods out there I'm just not going to use, fellas. At least not on a regular basis. Maybe once in a while we'll have a highly modded campaign, kind of like our epic campaigns. But especially these playthroughs here, I want this to look like 90% of what someone's going to experience, 95% of what someone's going to experience if they picked up a PC last month and they're downloading this mod today. So there's that bit of philosophy. I do appreciate all the mod recommendations. I don't check them all at this stage, especially ill. There's just no way that I can, you know, spend 4 hours testing every single mod that you fellas recommend. But mods that sort of pique my interest in certain areas where the game is either deficient or especially, and this is ding 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 if you guys have suggestions, especially if it can make the game sort of generically harder, I'm all in. Obviously anything AI related. There's actually a guy who contacted me. He said, hey, I do coding, I do modding. I'm working on a vast overhaul to Bannerlord's AI. What are some ideas? Let me know, right? You do tactics. What are some things you'd like to see the AI do on a regular basis? And I could tell the guy was serious, so I gave him about 2 paragraphs of, well, you know, in a perfect world, I'd love to see the AI do this, this, and this, and this, and this. And, you know, there's guys working on stuff like that. I'm all over that because the game, quite frankly, Tailworlds needs to hire that guy, right? Or at least some equivalent. The AI in Bannerlord is still not good. Now, I'm curious, right? You guys can leave in the comments. How does the AI of Bannerlord in battles compare to other games? I would presume it's below average, but I don't know, right? AI is probably very hard to program. And of course, we're talking AI combat decisions in real time. The little units do a decent job, right? They hold up their spear and shield and try to throw javelins in your jugular and shit like that. They do a decent job, but the cohesive battlefield plan, the overall plan from the enemy in Bannerlord is like a D. You know, I could give it an F, but we'll just go ahead and say it's a D, right? It's not good. Yeah, the charging zombie approach, the waiting for their units to be pounded with arrows before they enter shield wall. The cavalry never charging from the rear. Never. They never go behind you. Right? That should always be something programmed into it. Right? They should automatically, every 5th battle, you should have a bunch of cavalry circle behind you and make you nervous. Not just do that, but every once in a while just circle behind you and sit there and make you, you know, while their archers and infantry come at you, and then make you do something, right? Basically make the player use their brain tactically.
Make our
That's
way
something
back
that's
to the
really
land
lacking.
of action.
I'll just explain it because we'll just pick it up right here. You know, I'm doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes, fellas, because I know you guys don't need to watch it, right? We just ran up to Dol Guldur. We bought ourselves some armor. We got some fresh troops. We got a few upgrades, and we're back, right? This is the bottom line: is there's no action up there, right? When you go around Dol Guldur, and this is why I'm not going to show you. There's 9 bands of bandits. There's 3 allied forces just sort of rounding them up. And then there's nothing but trees. So we bring you back to the land of warfare here. And I don't, you know, these Dunlanding Raiders are actually a pain in the ass to fight. They've got all ranged units. You know, there's some targets you just want to pass. Obviously, we can just march through there. We would get influence for it, but we also might lose 15 dead. And these troops we just refreshed, right? This is one of the harder parts about being a mercenary in a huge open world like this. This map, the map of Middle Earth is huge, right? It's supposed to be weeks between Rivendell and Hobbiton and stuff like that. Well, the problem with that is if you're trying to travel on horse in a game like this and we're getting chased, we might need to defend here at this village. Take a peek here. See what we got. Sometimes villages are your best spot to fight when you're badly outnumbered like this. And I think this will work. Lots of hedge rows here, some open spots. Yeah, this is definitely going to work. You know, that's the fine line they're trying to split. Basically, nobody wants to. It shouldn't be a half a day between Isengard and and Minas Tirith, and I can't fight these villagers either. We'll suffer a bunch of losses. But at the same time, if it's just like the book, and it takes you 5, 6, 7 days, whatever, to travel these distances, then it's a snooze fest, right? So there's a definitive balance that they're trying to craft. I mean, I think you can cross the actual world of Calradia in like 2 weeks with a good horse, right? So the whole world, you know, whatever continent it is, in 2 weeks. You know, and obviously, and the same thing is true of games like Skyrim. I remember Skyrim, where it's all snowy and shit, the Elder series, Elder Scrolls or whatever. You can literally walk across the whole map in like 20 minutes or something like that, 30 minutes, as long as you don't, you know, stop at every village and shit like that. The whole map is like 2 miles by 2 miles, right? So you're in a little tiny biosphere. But if they made it, you know, think about it. Guys are like, it should be 300 miles by 300 miles. You'd just be trudging in the snow all day looking for an encounter, right? So there needs to be some kind of balance there. And the music ramps up here. We're definitely in trouble here if they have the right mix of troops. Although, man, we've got some really good buttresses for defense here. Skirmishers behind rocks. We should be fine. These skirmishers aren't great. The Dunland skirmishers, they're potentially tier 6. You'd think they're monster, right? They're Botanian wildlings. Except they don't have the throwing skill, the requisite throwing skill to match. You know, the wildlings, I think they have 150 or 130 throwing skill. A lot of these Dunlendings have like 70, right? They have good javelins and 70 or 90 or whatever. The very highest ones, I think, have 130. So they're not like hugely overpowered. They're obviously going to be usable. But when I first saw them, I was like, these are going to be the best units in the game, right? A bunch of high-end tier 6 skirmishers. Give them a speed banner. They have 10 javelins. But they don't perform quite as well as I expected. The orcs definitely. Orcs kick ass, right? The Uruk-hai definitely on the battlefield, right? I don't know how they might not do well in the simulations, right? Otherwise, I don't know how Orthanc got sieged so quickly. But on the battlefield, man, they are fucking tough. They're incredibly well armored. And we haven't really even gotten to the high-end Dol Guldur units, right? We're going to be spending more time up there, right? The idea is we're going to where the action is in the short term. So you're seeing us hang down here, down by Helm's Deep, right? That's where all the war is initially in the book. And then eventually we're going to make our way back up to Dol Guldur, or preferably Gundabad. If the elves attack Gundabad, we want to be part of that, right? The ultimate goal of this campaign on some level, besides having fun and just playing the orcs and enjoying this mod, is to try to kill the elves, right? Let's see if these godlike elves can be destroyed. If we can develop forces that'll take out the elves, I think that's a worthy and admirable challenge for our time here. Use a little bit of tactics, use some of these high-end forces of evil, do some flanking, kill them with our wargs. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to chop down some elves. You see our warg attack that guy, right? And doing damage to guys left and right. And I'm going to get more comfortable with it the more I use it. Get this warg, you can basically command him to attack. Now, he won't attack like 10 times in a row. There's a limit to it, right? But it's extremely nice to have your warg in there chewing on guys too, right? He's in there growling and chewing and shit. It's a really nice feature. Alright, skirmishers moving in behind the enemy here. They're attacking our square. What'd I just say about the strength of these orcs? Look at those fuckers. They're in there holding up their spears and shields. And this big batch of Rohirrim scum is fleeing for the hills. They just couldn't stop it. Right? They barely did any damage to it. Try to get some of our two-handed skill. I need a keep siege, right, to level this guy's two-handed. A couple of them will be better. We'll try to get in a little bit here and there, but he's so vulnerable because his athleticism is so low. Look at 82 athleticism. So you have no ability to juke your enemy. If you don't parry, you're dead. Right? So it's gonna be a bit of a challenge here. But you gotta love it, right? He fucking growls as he cuts the guys down. We can kick that guy to his death. And the Rohirrim here are slowly, it's like the tide is very slowly ebbing away from them here. They are slowly giving up their strength to the orcs here, certainly with our help. And another resounding beating here. Almost a 10-to-1 kill ratio for our force. That'll do. Come with us. And we plundered 10,000 gold. Very quickly we're getting rich. Take some prisoners here, but, you know, again, the prisoners are all one-night stands. You don't really care about prisoners. Unless you're right next to a city where you can donate them. Your prisoners in Tales of the Age of Men have a lot less value. They're just, you know, they're not worthless, but they're almost worthless because you're going to rarely recruit them. They're rarely going to help you in battle. And again, unless you're right next to a city, and we don't have any. I mean, we can donate to the castle still, that's true. But unless you're right next to a castle, you can't even fucking donate them. So, it's, I don't want to say buzzkill, but, you know, it's a different feel from vanilla Bannerlord, where you're eagerly taking prisoners and your prisoners become a big part of your army. That's just never going to happen. And this is interesting here. This force of Dol Guldur is roaming around. And they're not sieging. And they were at war. And look at this shit. They're not at war. I'm telling you, it's strange. Right, so the forces of evil haven't all essentially come out at war yet with the Rohirrim. So, kind of a limit to what we can do here. I guess we can help in a siege. This is, you almost never see me do this. Guys ask sometimes, how come I never see you do offensive siege as a vassal? Because it's punishing for your army, right? We've got 76 troops, 1 injured. I just spent 6 days refreshing this army. And, you know, the biggest risk, of course, with cities is trebuchets, right? Is catapults, right? You're going to get potentially hit with the catapult that kills half of your force instantly. I can't think of a more destructive thing for your army in the mercenary stage. You want to defend, you definitely don't want to attack. We'll see what we can do here, though. We're going to help. If I look at the numbers here, I think they fucking lose this siege without us. There's 200 defenders, and they only had, like, low 300s. So, we might have to help them here. There's no loyalty, right? I don't give a fuck about the Dunlendings. They're a bunch of fucking pockies from the west side here of the Gap of Rohan. But we're looking for shit to do in this campaign, so let's do this shit. We almost never do these, even if it costs us a couple dozen casualties. You know, the good news is we can pick up immediately a bunch of Dunlendings. The Dunlendings, for some reason, start off with like a vast empire. I guess the reason is that some of these allied forces have to have some cities, right? Orthanc and Helm's Deep, or no, Orthanc, that's the only city that Saruman starts off with, which is historically accurate, but obviously then you get a campaign like this where they lose it early on, and that's it. You're fucked. You have no base. You have no influence. You have no money, right? You have no defensive capacity. So, you know, it's you know, it's a challenge, right? They're trying to balance everything here, and at the same time, you got to fit the storyline. Can't have the elves have 12 big cities all stacked around Rivendell. Rivendell exists. They're using it by their old name. I can't remember what the name of it is. There's like 10 names for Rivendell. You got this little fucker here shooting at me. And the death spam, right? That's all you need to see. Just heaps of red as the enemy blasts us here. Siege. Then you got to go up the ladders into the meat grinder. Siege is a bitch. And it's also precisely why the reason you want to be on defense in Bannerlord. That's the thing, is the mercenary stage, right? You choose 90% of your battles. Sometimes you're going to get pulled into a fight, but most of the time you choose, right? So if you choose, why would you fucking fight battles where you're almost certain to have a high casualty rate? Now there's 10 guys in front of us here. We might be able to blow a hole. We'll have to see what they have up here, right? Do they have 100 young Rohirrim boys, or do they have actual troops, tough troops? And they've got a bunch. There's a lot of Rohirrim here. There's fucking archers behind them. They just brought more swinging axes. And, you know, we're bringing up troops 1 or 2 at a time here. This is going to be hell. They got archers behind them shooting into our ranks. They must watch the channel. It's a good job. They put their archers in a good spot down there, just flaying us on the walls. And I got smoked right in the head. Just 66 damage. Our character still is very brittle. We're upgrading his armor. The helmet will be the last thing to go, because I love his Fire Marshal Bill helmet. And, look at our Warg is in the way. Out of here, buddy. You know, suddenly we're in a little bit of a slog here, and you hope you don't lose 40 troops, right? They're rushing over all kinds of unarmored peasants here and shit like that, resisting to the very last. Sometimes I swear the AI is just trying to fuck you and cause casualties for your army. This battle's over, right? Look at the power bar. This siege is over for sure. And of course they're gonna defend to the fucking last little yeoman archer. Look at the fuckers. When you have weak characters too, you forget how weak, but you know, just a vanilla basic character is. When you run around with Glaron Heavy Hand, and all of a sudden you can't take a guy 2-on-1, right? You can't take two of them. You gotta use all kinds of process and procedure just to wipe out one guy. It reminds you, Bannerlord is a fucking difficult game, right? I had a guy comment recently. He's like, "Man, I miss your Disaster of War series," and I'm like, "Brother, I'm so sick, and it's hard for me to make any content. It's going to be very difficult for me to do series like the Disaster of War. You know, ultimately, one dude here. We're going to do the best we can. But like the Disaster of War series, at one point we had 60 emails of guys who had situations for us to try, and I love that. And at the same time, it's intimidating. Now, I don't know why these fucks are standing here. These are allied forces, and they're just going to stand here like dipshits. Make us do all the work. And we will get back to our Disaster of War series, right? We will be back for sure. But sometimes you just don't have the time for it, right? I'm working on 3 different projects at the same time. And on top of that, it's a monumental effort for me just to narrate a single one of these episodes. You guys can still hear it in my voice. I'm not suffering while I'm doing this, but it's not easy for me to do, right? I'm doing a lot of, I guess you would call voice inflection, a lot of control. Because if I speak too boisterously or I start to laugh or something like that, I will cough right in your ears. So, the nature of life, right? Hopefully this doesn't last forever. Sometimes illnesses like this can last for weeks though, right? Bronchitis. So, bear with me, fellas. I appreciate all the well-wishers out there. And we will do the best we can to continue to play Bannerlord and make some content that you guys enjoy, right? Enjoy or helps you a little bit in your own campaign. I think we're going to wrap it up here. I want to pick up some reinforcements from down here. I think we're going to go over army size too. We just hit clan tier 3, 113 now for our army. So we can start making a good sized force here, and we're going to go over it. That way we can start making a bigger impact in these battles. Of course, if you want to see more from this campaign or more from the channel, please subscribe. Please hit that like and hype button on the way out, friends. Sell some odds and ends here. We'll do all this behind the scenes so you guys don't have to trudge through all this. I appreciate you, fellas. And with all that said, I will see you next time.